Selwyn. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, a very special thank you. Um, I want to take a moment, a break, and get Dr. Harding fixed properly, and then I will come back and we will start the show. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your patience. Good evening once again. I am Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. Our guest tonight is no stranger to CWS. She is considered one of the women of CWS, Dr. Ph.D. Harding. She's been here before. I have lots of respect for her. Tonight, the show is usually we usually get into people's biographies a little bit as they tell us about their journey in life and what inspires, what motivates them, what are some of the challenges they might have faced, and so on. We do this, or I should say, the goal of CWS is to have these conversations with people to learn about how they use their gifts and talents to help others and make positive contributions to humanity. In so doing, my hope is that the youth, especially, can learn something from listening to someone talk about their journeys, but especially their challenges and how they might have overcome their challenges. Tonight is special not only because Dr. Harding is a daughter and a gem of our soil in Guyana, but because she works extensively with youth. And so I'll take a quick break, very quick, and when I return, I will introduce you formally to Dr. Harding. Good evening once again. Those of you joining us for the first time, I'm your host, Selwyn Collins of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. Thank you for joining us. The lovely lady next to me is Dr. Ph.D. Harding. Dr. Harding, good evening.
Good evening, Selwyn. It's a pleasure to be with you once again.
Thank you. Just now I was trying to tell you to turn off the fan. I know it must be hot over there, so I really apologize, but the sound is quite distracting. But anyway, I'm sure we're gonna get through this. You're a trooper.
Do you want me to turn off the fan here?
No, actually, I'm not hearing the sound right now. I don't know what was happening just now. But okay. That's good. Anyway, let's get right into it. There's a lot to cover, and I want to capitalize on our time together. You were born and raised in Guyana, and for someone who has traveled extensively and worked abroad to help build and transform nations, Dr. Harding, let's get right into it. Does behavior inform circumstances, or circumstances inform behavior?
Definitely. Both. Actually, because, we're born with some factors. Genetically, we carry behaviors from our parents and foreparents. Mm-hmm. So that, too, from my understanding and experience, sets the upper limits for how we will behave. Okay. Then we come into an environment which also helps to shape who we are and the behaviors that we will exhibit or display. So that both circumstances, which is the environment, I would say, and the genetic factor combine to make a personality, the way we would behave, given the circumstances of our lives, as I said, the genetic inheritance those things that we inherit from our parents, then set the upper limits of how far we will ever go. Okay, but the environment helps to support or destroy some of the behaviors that we come with.
Gotcha. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what was your life like growing up?
Oh, well, I was born here in Georgetown, in Albertown, Queenstown area. I live in that neighborhood still. I studied from nursery. I went to nursery school, Teacher Marshall's nursery school on Cummins Street. And from there, I went to St. Ambrose. St. Ambrose Primary. It was an Anglican school at the time because churches used to own the schools. Then I went to St. Stephen's for a few years when my dad died, and we moved to West Rheinfeld House in Skeem. From there, I went to BG, it was called BG Education Trust College, that high school with Mr. Cheeks and Mr. A.P. Allen and P.A. Alexander, who were the principals at the time. Then when I wrote, was it College of Preceptors, I then started to work at 16, 17. I started teaching. And my first teaching assignment was at Grove Methodist School on the East Bank, Grove on the East Bank. And then I went to, it was Agricola Methodist.
Okay.
So I started out in the teaching profession very early, learning to be a teacher then as what they called at the time an acting teacher. Then I moved out of teaching and I went into an office setting working as a telephone operator at Demerara Liquor Company. Then following that, I went to the US to begin studies at the university level. And went through to the doctorate at Columbia University in New York, then returned to Guyana to share my skills and to live here again.
Wow.
So that has been the background, and then it moved on into all kinds of exciting things, getting into politics, becoming a politician, a minister in government. And when we lost the elections in 1992, I became a member of parliament with the focus, I was shadowing education and health. That was for quite a few years. Then I went to the UN, offered me a job after we were in opposition for some years. After 92, in 2000, I joined the UN when East Timor was going to become a new country. I went to East Timor for the United Nations. Worked with them as well in Liberia when that too became a post-conflict country. I worked there, and following that, I worked with the World Bank in Sudan when that was going to become a new country as well. And in all these roles, it was helping to set up the governments of these new countries. So I saw the last two new countries develop from being post-conflict to independent nations. Both East Timor and the Sudan.
Well, I am so glad that you actually did my job for me by giving us this excursion into your biography. And so you mentioned education, and I want to start with this particular question. Why are you so committed to the well-being of all Guyanese, but especially educating the women and youth among the poor in Guyana?
It's a passion I guess I developed over the years. From early childhood, I came up in a home that was always one of sharing whatever we had. My mom had so many people living with us, taking in not only her own relatives, her nieces, and nephews, and later on their spouses and perhaps their children as well. But we were always a home welcoming people and sharing and giving. Early in my life, my mom was a director of one of the Red Cross organizations within our community in West Rheinfeldt. And I used to be the one to have to come home from school during lunchtime to collect meals, to take to shut-ins, we call them, to older people who couldn't fend for themselves. So I used to be the one to take lunch for some old people living in Lane Avenue. And when I took their lunch, then I would go back to school. So I was actually practicing this giving and sharing and loving and caring for people very early in my life. I was about 10, 11 when I started doing Red Cross activities, giving and sharing and caring for people and educating people. You know, I started at 16 being a teacher, and it made me care.
Wow. I'm going to shift a little bit. Is our nation, Guyana, in crisis as it relates to behavior, and how would you define that crisis?
Selwyn, when you have a commissioner of police saying to you that that police force will be taking back the streets, it tells you that this nation is in a crisis. Because if there has been no control, and that the emphasis and the focus of our police force is to take back the streets, we are a nation in crisis. It means we are in crisis socially, politically, economically, and it is frightening because no one feels safe. Once you have the level of poverty that we have in our country, once there isn't a distribution of the wealth or opportunity to gain access to a better lifestyle, no one is safe. Because you see, poverty breeds, and greed also breed what you call a sense of not belonging. You see, poverty also kind of surrounds crime. As I look in the poor neighborhoods in our country, what do I find? The schools are not properly equipped. They don't have enough teachers. They don't have enough space. They're not designed for children who are coming from a poor community. The programs are not designed to help those children to lift out of their poverty. The parents, many of them are not working. Many of them are at home doing things that may not help to raise them out of the poverty that they're in. You look at those communities, they may not have light, electricity, they may not have water, good roads, no proper drainage facility. Our poor communities are grounds for crime. Our poor communities are grounds for fear, distrust, and the feeling that it is going to be difficult to get out of this. There's this hopelessness. And so, you know, when you hear the commissioner talking about taking back the streets, it's often into poor neighborhoods that the persons committing crimes emanate. You know, you talk about a community like Agricola. You talk about a community like Sophia, where there is poverty, where children are being asked by their parents to go and buy drugs. They buy the drugs for the parents. Where the children have to travel long distances to go to a high school, or where to purchase anything, they have to come out of the community to purchase something at a reasonable cost. You know, so you find that within that set in, it is easy for the children to follow the behaviors that we don't want to encourage in our society. And I'm not saying all the children, because you have some homes, I knew homes within All Boys Town, where people did not allow their children to really mix within the community so that they could control the behavior of their children and the things that they learn. And so those children were able to come out a little more successful or to have a different lifestyle to one that where you find those communities being havens for criminal activity.
Can this situation be considered a national security issue?
It is a national security issue because none of us is safe. Once you have that level of crime that is going on in our society, once you have the level of imbalance with those who have and have not, none of us is safe because they're going to attack us, you know, from at some level. Either stealing from us, either killing us, meeting us on the street, feeling they have to have what we have without going through what we went through to get it, you know? And the beat goes on.
What you, in your opinion and experience, can be done to address this serious epidemic at governmental and community level?
What I've been doing, for instance, when I go into a community to work with people, you look at, first of all, job opportunities. How can I help to create jobs within this community? How can I motivate people to want to work? How can I let them see what resources they have that can be monetized? Then I also look at the children, who they're rearing, who they're raising. What activities are there to help these children? What activities are there to help the parents know how to parent? Because a lot of people really don't even understand child development. They don't know the stages of development that their child would be going through from birth. So they make a lot of errors. We're having a lot of young people becoming parents, and they don't yet know their children themselves. And they don't know yet how to raise a child and what to expect, what to give that child at what age, what behaviors to encourage, what to let go. You know, what is expected of this child at a certain age. So I look at parenting. How can I help the parents to raise better children, or to raise children that are, you know, going to have a better future? I look at what education programs exist in that community and try to make adjustments there. And I'll tell you about some of what I've been doing there. At health, what social development activities take place in the community, if there's any at all, and what kind of facilities, what kind of services are offered to people within the community. Health services, for instance, you know, is there a clinic? Is there a medics? Is there any kind of service of a particular standard within the community? I go into a community, let's say in a riverine community. Let's pick an Amerindian community that I'm working in Region 5. It's the only Amerindian community there that one can call a reservation, Maracaibo, for instance. You go in, there is no high school. There is nursery, there is primary, but there's no secondary education. So from 11 to 12 and older, there is no provision for, let's say, about 290 children within that community, which is 90 river miles away from the coast, from Maikoni. Then, so you have 11 and 12-year-olds coming out with nothing to do except what the parents could find for them to do. Not much in economic activity, except for logging, because it's forestry there as one of the economic ventures that you could get into, forestry. In an Amerindian community, of course, you will find people growing cassava and some pineapples, for instance, in this community. But you don't see agriculture as the mainstay when you have such arable land, you know? And you don't see the economic activities taking place in such a community. So what do people do? There's a lot of doing nothing. And then you get into behaviors that don't help to lift your life out of where you are, because girls will get pregnant or they will contract sexual diseases and so on. There are lots of unfavorable things that you can imagine can happen in a situation like that. So in a community like that, the first thing that I want to do is to develop a training program for children post 11, 12. For those who cannot go out to Maikoni to go to school because the dorm doesn't have enough room or space to hold children who can get into schools on the coast. We need to have a program there for those young people. So there is a building that begun to construct, that the community begun to construct, but it's not been completed. It's deteriorating for want of attention. That can be turned into a technical school, for instance, that you can turn that into a school to help people to find jobs, to get skills, to find jobs, not only the basic academic subjects of English and math and reading and literature and the science subjects and good things like that, but to find practical activities so that they can move from there into an economic activity. It would also help to not only work with the children, to educate the children who are 11 plus, but the adults too can come in the evenings and get some skills, processing, how to process some of the lumber that they have, perhaps, to move it into some kind of manufacturing entity. To also have the women expanding in cassava, you know, making cassava bread, casri, farine, and all the other things that we can do with cassava that people don't even know yet or haven't done it yet. You can use this center for processing and for helping to move cassava away, upwards of what they now do with it, to increase some kind of productivity. To what I've started doing too is setting up there a greenhouse so that other plants can be brought in and grown to use it. For instance, we've started doing sorrel there, and the soil is so rich there. I've got the largest sorrel and the largest amount of sorrel grown in that area. So it's one area where you can expand the produce being grown there, so that people would get into to productive activities. You also have to motivate them so that the training and sometimes when I go, I spend like 2 or 3 days just working with people, motivating and educating them about the necessity to monetize the resources that they have. You have land, that's worth a lot. You cannot be poor when you have land, is my motto. You are wealthy, so let's make it money. That's one of the things, that we can do. We want to bring housing for people to move closer to the center where they can have access to even nursery or primary school, because the farther away they are from the center, Morakabai, you see, they have difficulty getting to school when there's rain because they travel by boat from point to point. To get to where the school is, children have to travel up the river a couple of miles by canoe or by some boats. And if the water is too high, they have difficulty. If it's too low, then it takes hours to get there. They may never get there to school on time. So there are all these problems associated with living in this village. But you have 1,700 people living there. You cannot give up on 1,700 people. They are worth the time and the money and the effort
What are some
to put into 1,700 Guyanese people.
What are some of the challenges
and those children?
What are some of the challenges you face with trying to implement some of these solutions?
Well, financing is always a challenge here. That is one challenge, to be able to get there. It takes nearly $30,000 from Maikoni to get into the river, $40,000 to get into 90 miles.
How much is
up
that?
The river
How much is that in US dollars?
40,000 is 200 US dollars.
Oh my God! Wow.
And it could go up more returning as well. It's 90 miles by river.
Wow.
And the cost of fuel is high. So if you go in there, for instance, for me to take some adults, some teachers in there to work with the children on a private capacity to teach them, then I mean, you have to pay them. I have to pay them. They may not charge a high rate, but you have to pay them. Over the summer, when I brought some children down to Georgetown to do reading and math for 2 or 3 hours, cost me $6,000 per child per day. All right. So these things cost. So financing is one of the challenges. And the second challenge is changing behaviors.
Changing behaviors. Before you continue on that, someone in the chat room, Kim, asked, "What can the diaspora do to help to complete this school?"
To complete this school, financing or equipment. You think of a technical school for logging, for processing food. I'm about to set up a dryer, a solar dryer. So we need those transparent ceiling, the transparent roofs. We use zinc long ago. Well, they're the transparent. I don't know if you call it zinc, but that material is needed for some of the dryers to dry the food. Like the fruits, the sorrel, the pineapple, the cassava. I'm trying to get them into Edos and sweet potatoes for the drying of that, and a variety of other things. So that dryer, the NARI, our government office here, NARI, has given me the plastic to go around the sides, but we need like the ceiling for that to dry the stuff. And the building, it needs expansion. I have an estimate for that. I don't have it in front of me, but that is there to get that done, and we have absolutely no equipment. I must say though that I have applied to one of our international organizations to help to fund this. Of course, you know, with international organizations, it takes 2 years. I'm asking for a quick impact from this organization, which I've been assured can be done. So hopefully within the next few weeks, I'd know whether or not we're going to get any financing to get this done. But it would be fantastic if the diaspora could help us with even drawings of more modern buildings and some of the equipment. Also, to share some of your summertime or leave time and come down and help in some way. We would transport you once you get here into the community, or if another community, because I have quite a few I'm working with. Similar issues to be resolved and to help with. This is how we can help. If you can come, run some courses, do some teaching, you know, just be there and let them know you're interested in them. It helps and it takes them a long way.
Do you have a number to call or email
Yes.
how that people can contact you?
Yes, faith@faithharding.com is an email address that can be used for this purpose. And my telephone number is 592-225-2326. I will ask you to post a number that I have, a 202 number that I have.
All right.
But I'll post that later so that they can call me on that. I can't remember it right now.
Well, let's take a quick break. And Dr. Harding, when you come back, see if you can sit back a little further away from the right, like that.
Yes,
That's wonderful.
great.
Yes. So let's take a quick break
Sure.
and.
Arrowhead, I love my golden arrowhead. I don't think you heard me. I said arrowhead, I love my golden arrowhead.
We are back with the lovely Faith Harding. Faith, your background implies that you have been passionate about educating the poor for a very long time. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. I just want to see people's lives change for the better. Because I wouldn't say that we were rich, although you felt rich when you were a child. We weren't rich, and people helped me. You know, when I was in the U.S. at school, lots of people helped me. I mean, once in college, I was sitting there, I had to work day and night, to pay it. But one day the head of the institution came into the dining room and he saw me working into the college dining room and he said, "Oh, the staff have voted for you to get a scholarship." And I was like, "Really?" And just like that. So they gave me this scholarship that came from the Huber Foundation in New Jersey. I'm still to try to get in touch with them to let them know how my life has evolved. And just like that, I got the Huber Foundation scholarship to help to pay my tuition. And so people helped me.
So things do show up. Good
Sorry?
things. I said so. Good things do show up in life.
Yes, and for me, it's about doing the same thing, going around and just helping to change people's lives. Look, I have the Sorrel project in Riverton, and the women, there are about 10 women doing the farming. And they've been working hard because they've been motivated to work and they can see produce because this sorrel doesn't wait until November to blossom and bear or anything. This sorrel bears within 3-4 weeks, you're seeing sorrel or blossoms. And within 2 months, you have sorrel. 3 months, you have sorrel. 12 weeks, you're selling your sorrel. And it has motivated them so much that this woman who was living in somebody's bedroom, has now last week said to me, "Look, I've now acquired so much money, I can go and buy a piece of land. It's 100 from the government. It's 100 and something $1,000. She didn't make that much on the sorrel because they just started a few months ago. They started in June. But she was able to garner up enough money to pay down to get a piece of property that she can have a vision to see that she's going to have a home in a year or less, if they keep planting enough sorrel, because we do have a large market for it. 400 tons of dried sorrel is needed for this market. So they will be earning all the time, so when I see that, when I see people being motivated and their success in their lives, it feels really great. I mean, what greater reward you can have in life than to have shared.
In chat room, Carol asked, "How do you develop young people's communication and leadership skills?"
How to develop it?
Yeah, how do you? Yes, how do you working with young people? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one way is modeling for them and working with them in how does one communicate, because they have, we learn behaviors, communication behaviors from the people we are around.
Right.
And parents would say things, people say things in rather negative ways. We want them to know that the word is important, and if you start out saying something in a positive way, you will get positive results. So it is a way of showing them when they say something negative, what is the response they get? And when they say something positive, what is the response they get? So teaching them how to communicate with each other in using language that is positive, that is helpful, and it can put people at ease.
And in that same vein, what do you say to them, young people, to remind them that they are important and that they do count?
You have to help them to develop a vision of who they are and what is available to them and how they can go and get it.
And Dr. Sorry.
What they need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Like the skills that they need to get there, mm-hmm. and show them models. I show them how, I always talk my story, that my father died when I was 9.
Wow.
And my mother had 7 of us, and that it was not easy, but the feeling that you got, that you were wealthy or you were rich, was what set us up for success. and being able to communicate with each other, to help each other, sisters and brothers, and help neighbors. So I tell my story, and that it didn't stop me from rising to the highest level that I could have got in the field that I chose to stay.
I,
Being a child with one parent for most of her life, and being a person who didn't have wealth, who didn't have a lot of money, or no money at all. Because I had to start work at 16 and help my mother pay rent, which was just $18. It was the higher purchase house that we had in the housing scheme, the government housing scheme, and that was $18 a month.
mhm.
At that time, that was a whole lot of money, but I helped to pay that and to pay electricity some months and so on. So that, I can tell them my story. And that helps them to see that you too can make it, that you too can take this road that will help you develop in the best way that you can. Look, I was talking with some young people whose parents are incarcerated in Camp Street. Just over the holiday season, I held a workshop with children of prisoners, let's say that. And it was amazing to hear their vision of who they want to be. They all wanted to be somebody in one of the professions: doctors, nurses, lawyers. I was shocked at their perception of who they are and how they were going to get to where they want to be. And there was a role-playing session where some of them went out for 5 minutes into the back, less than that, to enact or to design or to role play, to discuss what they were going to act out. And they came up with activities that were going on within their communities. And it had to do with domestic violence and rape and child abuse. When they finished, I was surprised that they did all that in 5 minutes. They had police station, they had the whole community organized on the stage. I was shocked at these children who were from 8 years of age to 15, how they organized for this activity to take place. Then, to explain at the end of it what they just role played out there. I was blown over by their ability to articulate what they said was going on right now in their communities. But they meant that they must get out of the situations, and that they were going to prepare themselves so that they can have different lifestyles. Amazing.
I want to do something different. I want to go rapid fire because I have quite a few questions to ask you, and I want to see how fast we can answer some of them, because I really want to get into when you worked with some of the women about a year, I think it was a year ago, you started the Sorrel Project. I want to bring that into our discourse. But I want to also touch on what you do right now with young people, because I think this is an important conversation to have. And so I start with this. You speak quite a bit about children, their fears and insecurities. Can you speak a little bit about this and why it's critical for the development of Guyana?
Okay. Remember, a lot of our children now are coming up with parents who have not been trained in parenting, or do not understand what a 3-year-old should be doing and why the 3-year-old is all about no, or the 2-year-old is rebelling in some way or trying to develop the self. So parents beat our kids a lot. the children are really abused. You have women who are single parents. They heads of household. There are more women leading our households than men. There are more women, or the majority of parents, single parents, is a woman, or are women, the majority. And they have to work. So they go out to work and they leave the children sometimes unattended. Or they don't work and they have to have some set of persons finance their needs. So when they go out, when they go out to work, they have to leave the children alone. Children get into problems because they don't have the guidance and the support. It's not like long ago where we had neighbors who were taking care of children of the neighbor, or grandparents and aunts and uncles were around. This isn't the setting now. Then you have the parents who bring the boyfriends in. And I have many cases where these children are being sexually abused by the boyfriends. And you know the dangers of that and what these children are going through. I work with those children in terms of counseling, helping them to overcome some of the fears and insecurities that they have developed come up in those settings. Children who come out of divorce in other settings, and this doesn't have to do, this is right across the board, of children who are going through some stressful situations. You have children who have inherited deficits in the chemical balance of the brain, you know, in neurology, in psychology, to children who may have, for instance, attention deficit hyperactivity disorders. Children who we have a large group of children now who are considered autistic. And parents don't understand, or teachers don't understand, or people in the community don't understand what that child is going through, or why the child is behaving certain ways. And so the child gets beaten or maligned, or even their own peers or their brothers and sisters abandon them in many ways, or reject them. Dealing with that is not easy for a number of the children. So very early, children think of suicide in our society. Or children have many disorders that cause them to act in unwholesome ways. I mean, today I had a meeting with someone from a village who said at least 6 children in the school would react under pressure by trying to choke someone else, choke the teachers, or they break the glass, they try to jump through windows and so on. And if you have 6 children in a particular school or classroom behaving like that, you could imagine the frailty of that child and the people who are around that child. Mm-hmm. And there isn't the kind of help available. I don't know how many people are trained in psychology in our country, not very many. Psychiatrists are rare. I think the government has 2. One is a foreign person and another is a local citizen. But those are some of the problems that we have with our children and people not understanding. So you find children reaching out to people who aren't going to be very helpful to them in a wholesome way. We have 14-year-olds who, for want of a better word, will prostitute because they want money. Some of them have said to me they want money to buy the drugs that they're on before I can help them to
Wow.
come off of marijuana and other drugs that they use. You know, many of these children are suicidal. One told me that she went to lay down on the road for a truck at night in the evening, for a truck to run over her. And instead of the truck running over her, it swerved from her. And she was very angry, so she's calling me at that hour to tell me what happened to her. Had another teenager who was picked up for wandering and put in one of her lockups, in Le Penitence lockup. And when the mother came to me to try to get her out and we made the arrangements, she didn't want to come out from the lockups. Why? I couldn't understand it. So another young lady who we got out as well at the same time came right over here to me, and I asked her, why didn't this other person want to come out? She said, oh, because it's fun in there, because everything happens in one room. And, you know, it's exciting because sexual activity also takes place.
Wow.
And this particular girl then got a girlfriend who was older than her and who recruited her so that when she didn't want to come out and leave the girlfriend, the older girlfriend, but she came out, went back to one of her high schools. She was very bright, and went back to one of her very notable high schools and started recruiting for the girlfriend, other young ladies. And the frightening thing, when the mother came to let me know what had happened, was that the school for the younger child, another very good school in our country, where the 6-year-old was going to school, the 6-year-old was carrying out the same activity because the bigger sister had recruited her. And then she went to her school, that's in a class for 6-year-old children, to recruit as well. The teachers found her doing certain activities with with all the 6-year-old children in the classroom. So they called the mother, and you know, so then you have to work with all involved. So it's the child, the other children in the home, and the mother that had to receive therapy. These are some of the activities. These are some of the activities. Children, you know, when parents aren't around, when parents aren't there to support them, or parents beat them a lot, you know. There is more hate than love.
Wow.
There's more hate than understanding in the home. They turn to things that can relieve them, and a lot of them turn to alcohol and drugs. We have a lot of children, teenagers who are on drugs. I mean, I don't want to paint a picture of you know, it's such a sorry situation. It's not every child, but it's enough children for you to worry about and want to do something about it.
Well, you
want to make a change.
You've certainly answered some of my questions. One I was going to ask you is, what most frightens or gives you pause about the psychological health of some of the youth you have counseled? And another one I was going to ask is, what have you noticed in the young people you counsel that will surprise most of us? But I want to go to the chat room because Carol asked two questions. One, well, you answered one already. Is low self-esteem on the rise in Guyana, and how does it affect young people's behavior towards each other?
Well, you know what low self-esteem does, and that's why you see a lot of them cannot succeed in school. And the school doesn't always help because teachers don't know how to help them. They're not trained in enough of how to help change behaviors, behavior modification techniques. Teachers go there to teach a subject and not to help to develop a personality. You know, you go into a classroom, it's the teaching of a subject and not development of a child.
And Jen asks, what are some behavior signs parents should not ignore?
Behavior signs?
Yes.
That parents shouldn't ignore.
That they should not ignore.
Sleeping late.
Uh-huh.
They should not ignore bedwetting. They should not ignore bullying or being bullied in schools. They should not ignore the child that drinks. You can see the signs. I don't know how some of the children that I work with, how their parents don't know that these children are on heavy alcohol. They drink every day. Or before I started working with them, they were drinking every day.
Dr. Harding.
And parents are not seeing the signs.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Why do you care? It's so much. It seems overwhelming.
It pains me to see. I just want this country to be a great country. I just want children to have a good opportunity. I just want them to have a good life. I just want people, because if I could have it, why shouldn't they? And why can't they? If I could provide, there were difficulties, yes. I remember once seeing my son with shoes that were like flapping. And I was getting $800 a month working at the Ministry of Education. And I cried. I said, oh my God, the very thing I didn't want to happen when I studied and went to the best school that I could, Columbia University. I thought that going to the highest level, get a doctorate, I would provide. I would have money. I would make money. But I came home to work and I wasn't making money that was livable on. And here my son, and I said, oh my God, my son is going to school with shoes like that. It was a wake-up call too for me that I had to get a better job, and while still helping people, working for the government and the people of the country, but I had to earn a better salary. His father was there, yes, and providing too, but we were both in the same situation, working in our country for pittance. That was a little long.
I know you've traveled extensively and have met all kinds of very powerful women in leadership positions around the world. Who are and were some of the women that inspired and really motivated you?
Some good women, these are political women that inspired me. Really, Margaret Thatcher. Really was the first. For some reason, I was very excited about her as a woman, what she took on, what she undertook, and to fight her way through, and to be able to run a big nation like Britain. I was very impressed with her just getting there. And I said, yes, there's an opportunity for us to get there. She was one in my youthful days that I admired, one woman who I really thought took the bull by the horn to get those men to make sure that she would be the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. That was one woman that truly inspired me. There were other women, just my mom and what she did. Raising 7 children when her husband died, and she was a housewife with few skills. Although she was a brilliant woman. And to do what she did was just amazing. And that the first opportunity she got to go to the United States through her niece, who she had raised partially. She got that opportunity and she worked. I mean, I was amazed at what she did
Let me ask you,
to,
talking about
to
her,
help us.
not cutting you, talking about her, what is your favorite memory of her?
She said, "Darling, you are so beautiful." One day, she was very ill, and I had flown in from East Timor to see her. And she looked at me and she said, "Darling, you are so beautiful. You're such a wonderful." And I said, "Mommy, really?" Because, when we were coming up, people didn't tell you that you're pretty or beautiful. You know, um, People just told you negative stuff.
True.
They would tell you most of the time. At school, you were always beaten for something, and there was very little praise. And when my mom said that, that really struck a chord, and softened so much that could have hurt. You know, um, I just remember the look on her face when she said that to me.
Wow. Um,
Um,
you,
she was a wonderful woman, just great. She was just so tall. I mean, as a child, she was so tall and elegant. People used to call her the queen of the neighborhood because she was just so tall and elegant. She always spoke so well. She was just my pride and joy, really. And I just tried to emulate a little bit of who she was.
I see where you get your eloquence. CB in the chat room said, sounds as though schools themselves, from a government's angle, need to be properly outfitted. In terms of guidance counselors, changes in the teaching practice curriculum, just top mention a few. I'm not sure I understand it. CB, the last sentence, changes in the teaching practice curriculum, just top mention a few. Could you clarify that for me, please? And then CB said again,
Sorry, could
well,
you repeat?
I'm trying to, they said, okay, got you. Let me reread it. Sounds as though schools themselves, from a government's angle, need to be properly outfitted. In terms of guidance counselors, changes in the teaching practice curriculum, just to mention a few. And CB also said, sorrel jelly may also be another project. I've had it. It's delicious. And Esther
Yeah.
said, I taught at a senior secondary school, and it was heart-rending to hear the problems that kids face both at home and with their peers. We need guidance and counseling in schools urgently.
Yes.
And Faith,
Yes, we do. Hmm.
Dr. Harding, you started a soror project a few years ago to encourage women in rural communities to take advantage of their land and earn a living for themselves. What can you tell us you learned from that experience?
Okay. All right. I think a lot. Let me answer the one first with the schools.
Yes.
I think I see some good movement now from the Ministry of Education. Maybe it's the new leadership there, where they're really making some efforts to change some of what is happening. They're having some more inputs into school, a lot of input into working with the parents. I see the minister doing quite a bit of engagement with parents. I see she has now set up a really very interesting website, education called Education Now. I must say that I admire that. But there's a whole lot more to be done in terms of the guidance counseling. In terms of teacher training, what are you being trained to do? Teachers don't know much about child development, like the developmental stages. And why is it you teach certain things at certain times to children? And how can you turn the lesson into one that develops personality, good behaviors, and so on? That shouldn't only be a special course or a special person coming in like the guidance counselor, but we do need that. And we do need training in psychology. You know, the guidance counselors shouldn't just be people who have done social work. Social work is important, yes, but they don't get into the crux of therapy. And so we need therapeutic kinds of activities within the schools, within the classrooms. All right, that having said that, yes, I started the Sorrel project about a year. And what I learned from that is that people want instant money. People want to see instant gratification. Nobody wants to wait until it grows and so on. So that I am very happy that the seeds that we got from Mexico, from a firm in Mexico, were the product that the sorrel grows within 3 weeks. You begin to see it blossoming, and so that they could see the product coming quickly, and that they can get money within 2 months, when it would have taken 6 months before you can get any money for the sorrel. What I've also learned from this is that, for instance, there's no research on sorrel in this country. Although we've been growing sorrel for years, nobody has collected any information. There is no data. There is no understanding of the sorrel. And so for me, if you have institutions like, for instance, NARI, and you have IAST, I mean, you have a product like sorrel that you know could make so much money because it's a nutraceutical. It is known for its help in cancer, its help in high blood pressure, in hypertension, in diabetes, and all those things. It's that kind of product. And that the US has $82 billion available for nutraceuticals. You know, you will want to get at some of that money as a nation. This is why Jamaica invests so much in sorrel growers and planters and sorrel itself, because the Prime Minister has seen the importance of sorrel to economic development, or individuals gaining economic security. So I realized how we are not, I mean, not only the government, but individuals and people within the field of agriculture, people in the field of trade, are very unaware of what is important, and how you can get people to be economically viable, how you can get communities working, how you can help people to monetize their resources easily. What I also learned from this is, this is a little negative, because I have a food for work program within the project.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see the greed, it bothers me. You'll see people hoarding for themselves, and people using all kinds of tricks so as to get more than the other person, you know, or not share. So you have that human element in it that I didn't think I would find to the extent that I found it, you know, so that I had to change my strategy in the way that the food for work is distributed, because, you know, it's not a whole lot for a group. Let's say I choose 10, let's say one group is 10 persons, and you provide a box of chicken, which is 40 pounds. You would expect everybody to get 4 pounds of that chicken. I buy, I give them a bag of flour, that's 100 pounds. So if it's 10 of you, I expect everybody to get 10 pounds of flour. And I expect everybody to get 10 pounds of sugar, 10 pounds of rice, and so on, and 10 cans of whatever I provide. So, you know, that the human element even in sharing and caring, will still exist where greed, and that was a lesson that I had to learn.
So what have you learned about yourself during this from that experience?
That I've got a lot of patience, that I could turn $10 into $10,000.
Before I go to the chat room, I have this question I want to ask. From your experience working with women to help them empower themselves economically, what can you say is the top way that women undermine their influence?
That women,
Undermine their influence.
how they undermine their influence.
Yes. Working with how do they undermine their influence on the community, on other folks? How do you think, from your experience working with them, especially in this project, do they do that?
A lot of them were very shy.
Mm.
A lot of the women, well, not a lot, but a few of the women were not articulate and needed help in being able to face the public, being able to work with other strangers, people in their community who they may not have known before or worked with before. The whole socialization process, I think, would undermine their own growth.
Mm-hmm.
So that was part of the process of working with them. Let's say you take some clothing in, you would see greed coming in there, although it's something to share. And people would feel that if you are new in the community, the other women would feel that this particular woman hasn't worked hard enough or hasn't done enough in the community. She's not deserving of something. And so that undermines, other women as well in getting the project, serving its true purpose. So it's those ways of, what you call association.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't belong to, if you're not in the in group, how you can get rejected. So what we have been able to do is to get all the women to learn how to care and share for each other, and working together on this project has helped them, because they got to get out there 5 o'clock in the morning and dig the ground and plant the seeds or the seedlings and so on, and they're laughing and joking. And when I'm there, I'm sharing with them, and we share jokes and funny things, and that helped to lift any of that out of the group, so now they are a team, and they work, they share together. One gets sick, they're all at her place looking to help her. Another person had a fire at her house. Everybody that's in West Watuka farm there, everybody was running there to take care, because she didn't come and they wanted to know what happened. Is that she had a fire and she got burnt, so they took her to the hospital and things like that. And so you find caring. Somebody doesn't turn up, they want to know why you did turn up, and they go and look for each other.
In the chat room, Aram asked, what is the primary reason for all the issues today, and why are youth so easily lured into degenerate behavior compared to youth who grew up during the 70s and early 80s?
Oh gosh. Say that again.
Sorry.
What?
What is the primary reason for all the issues today? And why are youth so easily lured into degenerate behavior compared to youth who grew up during the 70s and early 80s?
Because there is the last question, why youth are so, because there is so much of it happening that they're seeing, and to become like a lot of peer pressure to be looking like this or looking like that. And parents today are more involved in negative activities than in our day, or children who were brought up in the 70s. The children today are seeing much more. There's television, which is showing, which sometimes is not monitored, and they're learning all kinds of things. They want to be hip, they want to be cool, they want to be like this person and that person, and there's nobody there talking to them about how negative that is and what road it's going to take them down. As I said, in some communities, you have the parents sending the child to buy the drug. You know, that didn't happen in our days. I don't know, maybe our parents did send us to buy alcohol. Perhaps I never had that, but that might have happened in the 70s. But now it's drugs. And so the kids now, if you're sending your kid to buy the drug, take a little sniff himself. Because you see how the father cools out and whatever when he's smoking. And these things are being shown. These things are modeled for our children. All the negative behaviors are being modeled for our children. And so they fall into it because they want to belong. A lot of their friends in communities are behaving in these negative ways, and the children just follow and they don't get punished for it.
Dr. Harding, what is most rewarding about the work you do?
In the work I do, just seeing success. When I see a child come off of drugs or come off of prostitution, when I see a child who takes his schooling important, have worked with him in 7 or 8 sessions, or her, it gives me a great feeling of satisfaction. When I see a woman interested in buying a house, a piece of land, and she is 45 years of age and never thought of owning or thought that she could own a piece of land, I feel great about that. And I feel, you know, today I was telling the Tushao from Maracaibo that if we can do the school, we can have the agricultural produce done. We can plant up all of Maracaibo. I can see children having transportation to go to the nursery and primary school and having a secondary school in there. If we can have those things and teachers get upgraded, they are asking to even be able to write CXT. They want to be able to do the end of high school exams. They don't have it. If I can do that, I could shut my eyes and die.
Talking about that, can you give that information, the phone number and the email address, so I can post it?
The 202 phone number.
That's the one you want to give out?
Well, my home number here is overseas, 592-225.
592-225.
2326.
2326, okay.
But I do have a 202 number, which I don't have in front of me. I'll have to go get it.
Okay.
But I can give you that. You can post it later. Please.
Sure. No problem.
Make it easier for people in the U.S.
We're coming to that closing time, and I want to ask you some very like personal questions. But tell us something interesting about yourself as a young minister in the government of Guyana in the 80s. An experience or anecdote, etc.
It was very exciting. You know, I didn't know how everything just happened so suddenly. I didn't expect to be asked to be a minister in the first place. But when it happened, I felt good that I could be leading, that I could be in a leadership position to impact on people's lives. I felt good about that. And I remember in Parliament, Brother UC Quiana. He was on the opposition side for the WPA, and he had some concerns about public servants who had retired and were not receiving benefits and so on. And I was Minister of the Public Service at that point. And I guess the way in which I responded, it was like kind of surprising, because I wasn't opposing him and I wasn't being defensive, but saying, yes, thank you for this information, and this is how we will do it. And I got back to him right after Parliament and so on, and I went in to the office and did the work, and I felt very good about that. But one of the most exciting times was when, well, that wasn't a minister, I was on the opposition side, but as a minister, yes, I did feel good about being able to do something about the circumstances that existed at that time, and to help people, and not to make people feel that because they were opposing you, that they couldn't have an in the government, and that they couldn't visit my office or come and help me, or I go out with them to do, to see communities. And that's what I like most of all. And working with people. I mean, they were Guyanese, so I didn't hate them, Ripu Daman Prasad, Dr. Chetty Jagan, Mrs. Jagan. I had some issues with what to do, like a book she had put out that was very degrading to Black Guyanese and people who voted, or people who were PNC and so on. But that came after. But while they were in the opposition and we were in government, I was as helpful as possible for them to have access to the resources that we had. And that I enjoyed most of all.
Thank you for that. June said, great work, changing lives one at a time. I would like to help. And DSACCB said, it's pleasing to know that there are uplifting activities occurring in Guyana, and it is my hope that this will overshadow the negative activities. Back to you, Dr. Harding. Who is someone in your life who has served as a role model and mentor to you?
Oh gosh, so many people. I think of this woman who was the president of Mills College of Education in New York, who was quite a role model for me because of the way she stood, even the way she said education, the way she pronounced the word education. I really admired her a lot. That was a woman that meant a lot to me outside of my mom and my aunts, who I had an aunt who was a figurehead for us, that was a master at caring and giving. Aunt Iris, she's passed on, but those were women who meant a lot to me. And in male figures, my father died when I was 9, but he was everything to me as I think I was everything to him. There was my uncle Andrew Jackson, who was quite a stalwart, and these were people sometimes not for what they said, but the way they walked, the way they carried themselves meant a lot to me. It drove me, it motivated me, because the walk to me said a whole lot about who you are, and able to project an image. Burnham.
Faith, I can't believe you did that. I was just about, you know what, I'm going to try my question. I can't believe that this just happened, but I'm going to call some names. Forbes Burnham. Yes. Dr. Jagan. UC Quiana. Fred Wills. Desmond Hoyt. I'm not trying to be chauvinistic here, so I'm going to mention Shirley Field Ridley, Viola Burnham, and even Janet Jagan. What comes to mind when you hear these names?
Strength, power, vision.
Wow.
Um, Caring people. I mean, I just saw, I guess not, I don't know how many people really knew Forbes Burnham. I just saw in him a masterful personality that just loved people. I mean, he would say to me, like when he was talking to me about Clive Lloyd, he said, you know, Clive is a true Guyanese. I said, what made you say that? He said, the man is a true Guyanese. I mean, and he just like cared about people. You know, he would say, Faith, you know, what can we do for this community that's so, what bright ideas do you have? And I mean, he was such a man. For me, caring, having a vision for your people, wanting the best for them was what Forbes Burnham was all about, a lot about. I know that, you know, things came over a bit differently for in a lot of people's views and so on, but in the end, it was about caring, about wanting this nation to be developed, wanting people to be independent, to be brilliant, you know. Education was so important to this man that he decided when all other nations were fussed out, providing free education for their people, he said, let it be free, because every child must be made equal through education, regardless of whether they had money, whether they're poor or rich. They must be able to go to a school that was a government school, that was provided for them by their nation, by their people, because that's what government is, you know, the people providing the financing and so on. And this is what he was all about, you know. Yeah. When in 1970, was it 76, for free education was going to make education free. I finished my master's degree in 1974. I was working on the doctorate in 75, 76 when he said he wanted free education in this nation. I left my doctoral work and I came to Ghana. I said, we're fighting for this at Columbia University, at Teachers College. We're trying to get nations to want to have free education, for governments to take charge of education. And my country is doing it. Stop the work, go home. And that's what I did. I came home in 1976 in the middle of my doctoral work. I think I almost finished all the coursework by then, because I finished the master's in 74, 75, 74. And by 76, I came home, well, before September 76. So I came home the February, March, made arrangements with the government, the Minister of Education at that time, and I came home and started the nursery education program from scratch, developed the whole thing. I was so excited. So 76, 77, and then I went back and finished my doctorate in 78.
CB in the chat room said, great insight. I'll try to be useful. Keep up the fantastic job.
Sorry?
CB said, great insight. I'll try to be useful. Keep up the fantastic job. And DSACCB said, can you discuss your current political status / party affiliation in Guyana?
Oh, I'm still a political animal. I love politics, but I don't belong to any party at the moment. None of them really meet my needs for what a political party should be doing and should be working on. And I'm full of energy, so I'm just working with people now. I'm watching on to see who would come up to my scratch so that I can join that particular party.
What are you proudest of in your life?
Why?
What are you proudest or most proud of in your life?
In my life, I'm proud of the son I produced. I'm proud that I moved from where I was
Mhm.
as a child growing up with a single parent out of West Randolph housing scheme, and that I could achieve um, the qualifications to make me the person that I am. Because I don't think if I didn't have those qualifications, I could have gone where I went in terms of the jobs that I got working around the world. I'd always wanted to see the world, and I was able to work on every continent in the world. And that pleases me. I'm proud that I
Um,
have made it.
and how has your life been different than what you'd imagined?
My life has been different in the sense that I can give more and more. And that, I went out to work and got the things that I thought that I wanted, the material things. I was able to join with my husband and buy our home
Hmm.
and some other properties. Um, I bought a car that I love. And those were the two things that materially I wanted. I have nice jewelry and stuff like that. But most of all is that I was able to earn money to come back to Guyana and give. I was able to start the soil project with my own funds. What I'm doing right now, I haven't got funds from anyone or anywhere. Some friends have donated $100 here and $100 there because when I was doing the children's garden project in Albion I also did a playground for those children. Some friends contributed to that playground and so on. People would send stuff, books, and so on, which help in this process. But the majority of what is happening, the large number able to feed every month around this country in several regions, has come from the work that I did and the money that I earned for that work. So that money has been put right back here into people's lives. And I'm happy I'm able to do that.
It's that this is an appropriate moment to read this comment in the chat room from June. June said, "True humanitarian." Um, what words of wisdom do you want to pass on?
The words of wisdom is to have a wholesome thought for everyone that you meet and want to give to ensure that by someone meeting you, their life has been better.
Hmm.
That what you give out makes that person smile or feel a sense of joy inside whenever you're with them because you have a wholesome thought
Have,
about them and to share with them.
and having traveled so extensively, um, what are your favorite places to vacation?
I love East Timor. I just love that country. I love the Caribbean. I mean, I spent some time oh gosh, there's so many places to love. I spent time in St. Martin, and it's such a beautiful place. The way that Prime Minister is, it's a woman Prime Minister, the way she's running St. Martin, it's just amazing. She has a beautiful country there. I love Colombia. I've been there many years ago, but it's such a beautiful country. Bogota, Medellin. Oh my goodness, beautiful, beautiful places. Mountains like Guyana, it's so rich. Um, those are the countries that come to mind right away. Of course, the United States of America, where I lived for over 18, 20 years. It's beautiful as well. But in terms, and Africa too, gosh, there's so many deer spots, Nairobi, Kenya, really beautiful, naturally beautiful And as I said, East Timor, naturally beautiful. Sudan, South Sudan. I spent a lot of time in South Sudan, more than I would have spent in North Sudan. But beautiful country, beautiful people. Everywhere, everywhere has its own beauty. And Africa is something to behold as well because of its natural elements.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask this, and I know we've gone past our time, but you're such a captivating conversationalist, Dr. Harding. You've advised governments, you have implemented policies and so on. You've worked in East Timor and all these places. Based on your research and your contact with women in other developing countries, what would you say to young women in Guyana about the importance of developing their communities?
What would I say to women in Guyana?
Right, to the young women in Guyana about the importance of developing their communities.
Oh, because as you develop your community, you develop yourself and your nation. And just was it this morning I saw on news some Republican women coming forth and leading the way for change in the governance of their country. The men didn't do it. It's these women who came forth and said, look, stop this nonsense. Let's get on with the job. And enough is enough. That gave me a sense of pride. And I hope every young Guyanese woman would have felt that sense of pride as they saw those women in a leading nation in the world come out to lead, to really take leadership in their country. And I would like to see that as women, because we are the forebearers. We're the ones who give the earth its human beings. We raise the children, we raise the society, we raise the values that are the standards of our society. It's the women who run their homes. We are in the majority leading this country's households. So therefore, when you do something that is developmental for your community, you are creating a new world, because we add to the world. We're a little village in the world. And as you create a better community in Guyana, you're creating a better world. So women, the world is yours. Just take it and make it right.
Let me go to the chat room. But before I do that, I want to, and I don't think I'm stepping out on a limb, I want to make this request, Dr. Harding. And at the time of your choosing, I will create this space. What you just said so eloquently about the importance of women in our communities and in nations, I would like to have a panel discussion, maybe 2 or 3 women. You choose them, you choose the other 2, and a time of your choosing, and let us have this discussion, because I think it is important for such a conversation to take place, and for us, and when I say us, men and women, to listen to this, to join into this conversation. So let me know when you're ready, and perhaps January or February, I don't know. You tell me, and we'll create the space for that. But let me just go to the chat room. Pauline said, great presentation and interaction. Love always, faith. Esther said, quite a positive and inspiring presentation. Do keep up the good work, Dr. Harding. Selwyn, please don't forget to post those numbers. I just might get involved in my own little way. Thank you, Esther. And DSACCB, appreciate your passion for Guyana and its people. Best of luck, Faith. So I want to ask this. I'm going to ask you this. What is next for Dr. Faith Harding?
Just recently, I knew what I wanted to be in life, because all the time I didn't know. I'm not embarrassed to say that. It's the truth. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I was just working. I was just doing things as my passion rose. But I want to be the president of this nation someday. so that we can just make it all happen. The whole vision of Guyana and its place in the world, its place, first of all, in this region, because we've got a lot to give to the region, to offer the world, as we've offered so many acres, thousands of acres of land as the lungs for the world. There's so much more Guyana can do in terms of feeding and providing the world with the kind of human beings that you want the world to have. And I think we can raise them right here in Guyana if we do the right things. And if we give equal distribution of opportunity, of wealth, and caring and sharing. I think we can do it. And I think I'd like to have the opportunity at some point in time.
Well said.
Only the other day, it was after I looked at the show that Oprah Winfrey had with the gentleman she was talking about, that people really don't even know sometimes what they want. I said, I don't know what I want to be. I never knew. And then it hit me. I said, really, I want to be. So that's it.
I'm glad you said it. I'm glad you spoke it into the atmosphere, into the universe. DSACB said, well, all right now you're talking. Faith for president.
Yeah, yes.
And, you know, the question I ask all my guests, what makes you laugh out loud?
Oh, gosh, so much stuff. What makes me laugh out loud? Just people. Just look how I laughed out loud just now when he said that. But I just love life. I love and you know, enjoying things around me and people around me. I laugh out loud with funny stuff.
Well, I have to say that we went over time, but it was worth it. Thank you. And please don't forget what I mentioned just now about having this panel discussion about the importance of women and what women can do. I really do believe that the time for women has come. So please let me know. And also, I have been warned by Esther to post the numbers. So Dr. Harding, I am going to say this live that I haven't been given the numbers yet. So please remember to give me this number so I can post it, and I will not be in trouble with Esther. And
I wonder if I could walk. Okay, I'll get it to you.
Go ahead, go. Well, yes.
In a few minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll have to look.
RM said, listening to Dr. Harding reminds me of the sort of enthusiasm I saw in Guyanese leaders before I migrated. And so, Dr. Harding, you know, time has come. I'm sorry that we have to part, but, you know, time is upon us. And thank you so much for spending this time with us.
This was wonderful, and I thank you and thank the chat room too for all the comments. I really appreciate this. This was a lot of fun for me.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And to the audience, thank you for listening, for joining us. This is Selwyn Collins saying thank you and good night.
Good night.
Every day, more than 30,000 children around the world die of preventable diseases. More than 300,000 children are being used in war as child soldiers. Lord have mercy. A child should be loved. A child should be held. A child should be clean. A child shouldn't smell. A child shouldn't go to bed hungry at night. A child should be taught wrong from right. A child should learn to say thanks and please. A child shouldn't suffer from preventable disease. A child is a fruit that shouldn't be picked before it's time. To do that to a child should be classified a crime. For the children.